The photograph wasn't supposed to be there. Not after 40 years. Not after silence. Not after we both claimed to have moved on. It slid out when the nurse opened his wallet, an old leather one, softened by time. She didn't know what she was handing me. I didn't know what I was about to hold. But when I saw it, I knew. It was me. Younger. Laughing. Sunlight caught in my hair. That half-smile he always said was the reason he never took enough photographs. I remember the day it was taken, though not because of anything dramatic. It was ordinary. Simple. The kind of day you don't realize will matter until much later, when memory has sharpened around it. What I didn't know yet, I whispered to myself in that hospital room, was what he'd written on the back. That would come later. For now, I stared at the picture. And suddenly I was 21 again. He'd called that afternoon and said, "Meet me by the lake. I want to remember something." I didn't ask what. With him, the not knowing had always been part of the magic. When I arrived, he had that old camera, the one he bought working overtime. He kept raising it, lowering it, raising it again. He wasn't photographing scenery. He was capturing seconds, hoping they would last longer than life allowed. What none of us knew then was that he would be the one who walked away. Not out of cruelty. Out of fear. He wanted a life bigger than this town. I wanted a life rooted in it. So we found the oldest story in the world. Two people who loved each other. But not in ways that aligned with the futures they were building. Years later, I would realize why he never called. Because calling would require facing what he'd chosen. Back then, I told myself timing was the villain. Now I know, sometimes courage is. The nurse asked if I was family. I almost laughed. How do you explain a relationship that was never properly defined? But shaped you anyway? He was someone I knew, I said. It sounded too small. But grief makes truth shrink until the heart can hold it. She left. I stayed. The room smelled like antiseptic and endings. His wallet lay open beside me. And the photograph, the one I didn't know existed, waited for me to touch it again. I flipped it over. On the back, in handwriting older than I remember but unmistakably his, there was one sentence. Still the woman I love. There are moments when your entire past rewrites itself in a breath. I sat there, thinking of all the stories I told myself about what we were. He forgot me. It didn't matter. It was just young love. It was nothing. I believed those lines for decades. Not because they were true, but because they were easier. But the part that broke me wasn't the photograph. It was one single word. Still. That word meant survival. Persistence. Memory refusing to fade. It meant he carried me through marriages, failures, holidays, and years no one talks about. Why? Why keep something like that? I thought of a Christmas years after we parted. His mother saw me at the market and almost cried. He keeps things, she told me quietly. He never lets go of what matters. I didn't understand it then. I do now. He wasn't someone who chased closure. He archived love. He archived loss. He archived me. People assume the pain is in not ending up with someone. But sometimes, The deeper ache is learning you did matter, to someone who didn't know how to show it when you needed it. I stared at that sentence on the back of the photo for a long time. Still the woman I love. Did he write it during his divorce? After he saw me again at the grocery store and pretended not to? After his first heart scare? When people rewrite their priorities in private? I will never know. He couldn't answer. And the truth was, he wasn't the only one who failed to speak. I could have called too. I didn't. Maybe we forgave each other without realizing it. For 3 days. I hid the photograph in a drawer. I told myself it was because I needed time. Really? It was because I didn't want the woman I became to meet the woman I used to be. On the 4th day, I held it again. I noticed something I hadn't before. The edge where he must have rubbed it with his thumb over time. A small wear mark. Right where my smile was. Maybe, I thought, love doesn't die. Maybe it just changes its job. Maybe its job is no longer to be a future, but to be a witness. You listening to this. You might not have a photograph. Maybe yours was an unsent letter. A voicemail you deleted. A song he played once without explaining. But I know something about women like us. We tell ourselves we imagined it. That we loved harder. That they moved on. That we were foolish. We punish ourselves by believing we were forgettable. But here I was. Proof in my hand. That I had been remembered long after I stopped remembering him. Maybe you need to hear this. Sometimes you were loved more deeply than you knew. They just didn't know how to stay. I didn't tell my children at first. Or the man I have now. Who makes coffee the way people do when they've learned that love is made of ritual, not fireworks. Love now is quiet. Stable. Kind. Love then was wildfire. Terrifying. Beautiful. I don't compare them anymore. They don't belong in the same category. One night, I dreamed of him. Not as a ghost, but as the age he was in that photograph. He didn't speak. He just lifted the camera. And I woke up before the shutter clicked. Maybe that was the point. Some memories choose to stay unfinished. So we keep reaching toward them. I placed the photograph on my nightstand. Not because I want to go back, but because it reminds me of a truth we forget too easily. There were versions of us. Young. Hopeful. Unbroken. That were deeply, fiercely loved. If you've ever wondered whether you were forgotten, I would tell you. Look again. Sometimes the proof lives in places you never expected. Sometimes the love you thought ended was still being carried. Quietly. Faithfully. Until the very last breath. There was one more thing I found in his wallet. I whisper now. But that's another letter.